Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the Awardist. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Happy to be here.
You have an extraordinary season of work, two roles in particular that show off your range in a very, impressive way. And before we get to Barb and Star, go to Vista Del Mar, let's start with Belfast. Belfast is Kenneth Branagh's memoir about his own boyhood. And you're playing a character who I think in the film is only referred to as Pa. Am I correct about that?
That is correct. Yeah, he did have a name. I mean, his real name was William, and he got called Billy. But I think that sort of speaks into what Ken wanted it to be in terms of like semi-autobiographical. You know what I mean? Not like you are playing my father. This is the true representation of who my father was. It actually, in a lovely way, gave us more control to do something that we wanted to do with it, for Caitriona and I and for Kieran and Judi Dench, because we're all just called like Ma, Pa, Pop, Granny, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like the every version of these people rather than specifically Ken's family,
Yeah, and it emphasizes too, I think, that the film is definitely from Buddy's point of view, right? Yeah. I mean, it emphasizes that this is a child who is remembering Ma and Pa, and it's his perspective. That said, I wonder, did you and Kenneth Branagh speak about his specific father? Did you do research? Did you look at photos? Did you listen to audio or anything at all to the extent of actually studying his real father?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about that. And also, I would be able to ask Ken all the questions I felt I needed to. And I feel like early on, I wouldn't say he was steering me away from it, but like, I got the impression early on that like he wanted my interpretation of this man that was on the paper rather than him trying to mold me into who exactly his father was. He was like, you do your thing with it. I trust you. I mean, so much of this experience was driven by that, by trust, by Ken imbuing myself, Caitriona, certainly, if we can talk about that as our own kind of like unit, which it felt like it was sometimes, and then Pop and Granny were their own thing, and then the boys were their own thing, but then collectively we had our own thing going on too. It felt very much like that. And I know for Caitriona and I, we've never felt trusted so much on a set before, and I think a lot of that was down to Ken going, you guys bring what you want to bring to this, and I'm not going to try to say my father wouldn't have responded like that, or my father wouldn't have found that as funny as you're playing it, or whatever it was. He was just like, I guess also to create that slight separation that like this is, fact by fact what happened in my life. Like about 90% of this did happen, and all the main events are truthful to what really happened. I have to admit, like, I am from Belfast. My father was from Belfast. His father before him. I come from a long line of men from Belfast. So I luckily have a deep set inbuilt understanding of men from that part of the world, which you don't often get with a job. It was a lucky one for me in that respect.
What is the nature, in a general sense, of a man from Belfast, you being one? Like, what is he like? I know we're generalizing.
Well, to generalize, in my opinion, it is someone who works hard, is all about family, who finds humor in everything. That's something that's kind of in most people from the island of Ireland anyway. We've learned to use humor as a tool to get us through even the darkest of moments and use it at the darkest of times, sometimes to our detriment maybe, but also sometimes it really shocks people where we choose to use humor, I think.
It's that or cry,
Exactly. What are you left with? So there's a humor that is within a lot of men from that part of the world, a resilience and ability to be able to sort of deal with not great times and have to make decisions based on the bleak surroundings, not just with the beginning of the conflict and the troubles that went on for 30 years, but, people in Ireland from way before the dawn of Northern Ireland as a country, which is only 100 years old, will be 101 this year. People in Ireland, through lots of different British rule and famine and all sorts of stuff. They've had it bad for a lot of time, and I think that has built resilience in men and women from that part of the world.
I'm glad you brought up the Troubles, because I've seen many films that address them obliquely or head on. Although I have to admit, I'm very impressed with the way that Ken addresses it in the context of this story. It is definitely a part of the universe of his upbringing, and at the same time, I wouldn't say this is an expressly political movie.
No.
I wonder if this was something that you noticed when you read the script, or if it's something you discussed. How explicit or how head-on was Belfast going to be addressing the Troubles?
Yeah, to be honest, Josh, I think that's what's really important about this, and that's why I feel it's very timely and necessary to be telling the story. I have a strong understanding of what that means to be from there, and also what the interpretation from outside is of being from there. I left Belfast 20 years ago. I've spent a lot of those 20 years traveling around the world, working in different parts of the world, meeting lots of different interesting, creative, cool people. Met a lot of people who aren't cool and creative and interesting also along the way. But, there's often quite a visceral reaction to when you tell people that you're from Belfast. A lot of people can't really believe it, that, they have this idea that it's just like the Gaza Strip or something, and it's just, and then, you look back. I've been writing something that in the last couple of years that's all set in Belfast, and doing so much research on it's set in the early 90s at home. When you see the footage, the news footage from that time, and you read back and you remember back what was going on for almost consistently for the whole 30 years, it was bleak, it really was. When you're there, you're sort of taking it for granted. It's not having the impact really that, the news is sort of the same every night, and you get used to it in a quite a sad way. But now when you see that, look back and see the footage that was being beamed across the world, and no wonder people have that idea of what Belfast is. They're just seeing rioting in the streets and people throwing petrol bombs at each other and bombs going off and people dying and people on the same different sides of the street killing each other. Like that is what the news was from home. So, but if you're there, that much of the reality is very different from that. And as you said, like, we've seen great films that tackle the Troubles with, In the Name of the Father with Jim Sheridan back in the day, and a couple of films that Jim did actually. And then what Kenneth Branagh's done with Belfast hasn't been done before. We haven't seen it through the eyes of regular people, normal, hardworking families who have just been caught up in the middle of all this, who didn't go looking for it, didn't instigate it, weren't trying to get involved in a way or picking sides. And, there's a big majority of people at home who that was their experience of it, and see it through the innocent eyes of a 9-year-old boy who definitely didn't look for it or want it. That's important. That's an important message for people to see, because that was always my understanding of it. Like, you didn't have to be politicized or driven by religion or whatever it was. That there were people who just didn't want it and wanted a peace, a peaceful environment. And this captures that, and I think that's really important. It's important for the people of Belfast to have that portrayed. It's also important for people across the world to see this and go, oh, right, they're not all just like, it's not just filled with like hate, they're normal people there. It's important.
It's one of the things I really appreciate about Belfast. I also feel like Kenneth Branagh does a beautiful thing with the cinematography, where every once in a while the black and white does feel documentary style.
Mm.
So it's almost doing the work for you in a sense of being true to that moment and its violence. And at the same time, it creates a bit of nostalgia. And like you say, it lets you enter into these characters, I think, in a more intimate way. Did you talk to Kenneth Branagh about his intention of shooting in black and white before you performed?
Yeah, I think the first time we ever had like a Zoom with each other, it was like, well, I think it was the first Zoom I ever had, because it was very early in the first lockdown, and he was like, he wants to what? Zoom with me? What is that? I didn't even know. And of course, now we Zoom, 20 times a day. And I think he said he had a plan to maybe shoot it in black and white. There is a little bit of a vanity aspect of being an actor and told that you're going to be in black and white. that is comforting because you look better in black and white. That's just, there's a bit of that too. But I think it benefits it massively, and talk to that sort of documentary style that sometimes is the case. And Harris Zambalukas, our DP, was just incredible. But again, keeping it in that perspective of a 9-year-old boy, and like being in and amongst it and being small and seeing this world sort of explode around you, figuratively and literally, just put you in it, put you as an audience member. It just made it feel very authentic, I think, rather than like very stagey setups,
Yeah. The authenticity is definitely a part of the way it looks. I think the majority of your scenes, maybe all of your scenes, are opposite Caitriona Balfe, this just powerhouse actor. And
Yep.
what she's doing in this film and what you're doing in this film with her is, without embarrassing you, it's some of the best acting of the year. It's a beautiful portrayal of a working marriage, a marriage that isn't perfect, but a marriage that is sincere and has a lot of stakes, and we feel it as viewers. Can you tell us a little bit about working with Caitriona? Do you have different acting styles, and what it was like making those powder keg moments happen with her?
I just consider myself so fortunate to have had a dance partner like Caitriona in this movie. We really, really met at the same page every time. We were never combative in our plans for how we thought the energy of the scene should be. That also always fell in line, luckily, with what Ken had in mind. He also, as I said at the beginning, like he always sort of gave us his freedom to like do what we wanted to do and trusted our instincts. 100% of the time, our instincts were identical. Caitriona and I, truly, I really mean that. Like, they were identical, and they just worked in symmetry with each other, and it was always cohesive. And that was just luck of the draw, maybe a bit, maybe very clever on Ken's part to put those two energies together from what he had worked out and what he'd seen of our work before and from meeting us. It was just always easy with her, and it really felt easy. And I think when something's really well written and you're working with someone who's great and you feel very comfortable in the role and with the dialogue, it can feel easy. You're still terrified, but like once you're in it, you just find this rhythm with each other. And we just found that rhythm really quick. I think our preparation was similar. We both want to have fun. That seemed to be a real theme with the whole cast. Such powerhouse actors in there, outside of Caitriona, with the rest of the family of Ciarán Hinds and Judi Dench, but they similarly just came to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, leave me alone. I need, and I'm not breaking character here. Like, there's none of that. And, like, everyone has their own way of doing it, and it's not like I don't have moments where I will be like, I just need a minute here to get myself into the right headspace. And we all do that. But for the most part, it was a very buoyant and fun set where we were making each other laugh, telling each other about what we were up to, and then suddenly we were filming. And it just kept that sort of openness with each other and sense of family that we all really understood each other. So life would be easy if I could do every job of Caitriona Balfe.
Well, that's as good a segue as any into your other project, because you're another film where you're working with very strong women and very specific characters, and I get a sense that a similar oasis of family was created. I'm speaking, of course, of Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, and doing that kind of a comedy. I understand that was shot before Belfast, right? And that was a film that was delayed, but this really does display your range in a very beautiful way. First, let's go backwards a little bit. And you play a character called Edgar in Barb and Star. He's a henchman to Kristen Wiig's villainess, I guess you would say. What is it like for you when they're sending you the script and they're saying, hey, give this a read? What was your original reaction to the material?
Yeah, there was a very strong sense early on that they wanted quite a lot of me in there and what they'd seen of me. So there's also a very early decision that I would have my own accent. And I loved that then they wouldn't change the name from Edgar Paget, which growing up in the island of Ireland, you don't meet a lot of Edgars for a start, certainly with the surname Paget. But just added to the sort of whole ridiculousness of the story and that world that Kristen and Annie create. I read it. I laughed so much reading it. I thought this is definitely the most bonkers script I will ever read, probably. And I was just desperate to do it straight away. For whatever crazy reason, they wanted me. And I had a great chat with Josh Greenbaum, the director, who sometimes just meet someone and instantly I was like, oh, we're going to be friends forever. Like, it was just within 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes of my FaceTime with Josh Greenbaum, we were like hysterically laughing, like genuinely hysterically making each other laugh, and like being really bold and like laughing about stuff that is like risky early on. It was getting crazy, and I was like, this is going to be a lot of fun. And then, Kristen and Annie are like, they're geniuses and they love each other and they know each other so well. So, and they've been doing this since the growling days of improv. And to come into that as someone who hasn't done comedy before and try to keep up essentially and try to there's nothing makes me happier than making Kristen and Annie laugh. Like, the first time I really got them, we were doing some improv stuff and I got them and I was like, oh God, this is cool. Like, wow, what a feeling, and they just made me feel like I was part of the club early on, and we had so much fun shooting that movie, as you can imagine. And I felt it was exciting I felt like a lot of people were going to watch this just finding it unexpected maybe that I was doing that.
I was going to ask that. Did you have an inner comedy that was busting to come out? I mean, I think your fans do associate you with serious drama, and obviously your TV work and 50 Shades. So was there a sort of a silliness that you were wanting to get out here?
Yeah, and listen, when I used to always want to do comedy and then just didn't. I ended up quite far away from that path, really. But when I first was coming out to LA, I was like, I had a load of meetings with Funny or Die, and I sort of started writing this like blog for them. I don't know if it ever got published, but I was coming up with all these skits with them, and I really thought that's where I was going to go. And then I did The Fall, which is, I play a serial killer, which isn't funny in the slightest. And then you're further and further away from the comedy ship. So it was like one of those things. I think if you put stuff out there into the universe, it's got a way better chance of happening if you put it out there. And I think like I'd probably just said to quite a few people that I wanted to do a comedy. And if you say it to the right people at the time, Kristen and I had the same agency. We still have the same publicist. So there's lots of people in each other's world who know. So, it's a tiny industry. It doesn't take much for that sort of to get out and suddenly, does he want to would he do comedy? Oh my God, would he do it? It's that sort of thing. And then Kristen and Annie actually, once my name was sort of in their heads about that, they watched a couple of like chat show things I'd done of like me and Graham Norton and stuff and telling stories that as me, I guess, that they liked, that they found funny. And that actually was what kind of clinched it for me, I think, weirdly, was like chat show appearances and them seeing a different side of me than what the perception is or whatever. So I love it. I'd love to do more. Look, I am, a quick glance at my social media would show I have a really silly, childish side to me that is probably closer to me than anything else, And actually, when we were shooting Edgar's Prayer, which is the big dance song and dance number that I have in the movie, my wife and kids were with me for that period of it, and we were in Cancun, in Mexico, and I was shooting a segment from it where it actually didn't make it into the cut, but I'm on a jet ski but beached. I'm not even on the water on this jet ski, and I'm like waving as if like there's a wind in my hair, and I'm like lip syncing to the song. I hadn't recorded the song yet, so I'm lip syncing to like some other dude singing the song, and it's just absurd, like how silly it was. And then my wife was like, "Do they know like how close this is to you? Do they know you're just being you?" And I was like, I think they're probably starting to work that out, that I'm just this guy. I'm probably closer to Edgar Paget than I am to any other character I played.
And maybe these musical numbers are going to start popping up in the rest of your projects, because you really nail those musical numbers.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
So funny. I would like to put it to you. One, was there a piece of art or a movie or a television series that helped you through that time that you were like, wow, this is great, this is my jam? And two, was there a particular role that you saw during the lockdown that you were like, oh, I wish I could have done that? That's something or maybe a director you'd like to work with or something.
You know, timing is everything, isn't it? And there's so many things that came out at the beginning of the first lockdown when we were really like, what is happening? Nobody had a clue what was happening. Little did we know that like 2 years later, we're pretty much in the exact same position. But I think like the rest of the world, normal people came out at a time when everyone was just indoors, hungry for some great content. And we got this gift of a show and these two just phenomenal performances. And, you know, I don't do this very often, but, you know, A, the industry's tiny. B, Ireland is even smaller. So it was like a very easy way to get in touch with Paul Mescal. Like, within a minute of asking for his number, I had it. And I just got in touch and just was like, told him how inspired I was by his work. And, and now we have a nice little relationship where we sort of like chat to each other sometimes. And I think it's important to reach out like that with people. But I thought what he did was really, really special. Daisy Edgar Jones was incredible too. So I think that, and that was early on in lockdown. And so I think that show was a real escape for me. And then I'm trying to think, we've all just watched so much stuff.
It's true.
In the last 2 years, I mean, we've just taken on everything, haven't we? I just finished The White Lotus. I was a bit late to the party with that, but I really loved that so much. Yeah, and there's, directors, I'm always slightly hesitant to talk about directors because I feel like it probably just won't happen. You'd just be like a fanboy for the rest of your life and you'll actually never get to work with these people. But there's a few. I tell you, I met Barry Jenkins a couple of times and hung out with him a bit at Telluride this year, and that was a sincere thrill for me. Like, I'm such a fan of his. So even just meeting him and chatting to him and just like pretending you're his friend for a couple of hours was kind of enough for me. Maybe I don't even need to work with him. That was enough. I got my fix.
Nice. That's nice. I look forward to seeing all these collaborations in your future work. And I want to thank you for these really thoughtful answers. We look forward to seeing how Belfast does and Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. That's what we do here on the Awardist. We track these movies, but at the end of the day, it's also about speaking to people like you about the craft. So thank you, Jamie, for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Josh. Thank you.